My name is Fred. I've been working the late shift at our local Burger King for about 2 years now. It's not glamorous, but it pays rent, and the hours work for me. I've always been a night owl anyway, so being behind the drive-thru window from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. doesn't bother me the way it would most people. And if you've ever worked nights, you already know the truth. The world changes after midnight. The roads get emptier. The lights feel harsher. People speak softer, or not at all. And the weirdest part is how normal it starts to feel. This all started maybe a month ago. I was working the drive-thru solo. We're usually understaffed after midnight, and that's when a car pulled up to the speaker. A male voice came through. Pretty unremarkable. No accent that stuck out, no slurring, no weird tone. He sounded like any other late-night customer. He ordered a large double Whopper with cheese meal with a Coke. Standard. But the one notable thing, the thing that made the moment stick in my head, happened when he went to pay. When the car pulled up to the first window, he rolled the window down just enough to slide his card through. Just enough. Not a normal paying window down, not a casual lean-in. It was like he didn't want me to see inside his car. And I couldn't. His windows were tinted, dark. I couldn't see his face. I couldn't see his eyes. I could barely see the outline of his hand. He paid. I handed him his receipt. And then he just drove off, like without stopping at the second window to grab his food. I stood there for a second with the bag in my hands, staring into the night lane. I even leaned out a little, expecting him to pull forward, maybe park, maybe circle around. But he didn't. So I waited, a few minutes, just standing there with his food, watching empty pavement. Eventually, I set the order aside. Later, I ended up eating it. People do weird stuff sometimes, especially at 2 in the morning, so I didn't think about it too much. About a week later, it happened again. Same order, same exact thing. Someone paid at the first window, then drove off before picking up the food. I remember thinking, that's strange. Someone did the exact same thing last week. But I didn't connect the dots, not yet. I figured it was a coincidence. It wasn't until it happened a third time that I realized it was the same person making these orders. And by then, I knew something weird was going on. But I wasn't going to complain. The food was made, it was paid for, and I was the one who got to enjoy it. So I kept eating the free Whopper meals and tried not to think too hard about why some random guy was essentially buying me dinner every few days. This went on for a few more weeks. Every 4 or 5 days, the guy would show up. Always late, usually between 1 and 3 a.m., and always the same order. And I started to almost look forward to it, which sounds ridiculous, I know it does, but you have to understand how routine nights get. Same grease smell, same hum of machines, same tired coworkers when you have them, same empty stretches where you're just standing there blinking at fluorescent lights, counting minutes. So after a while, my brain started treating it like a weird little perk, like, oh, it's been a few days. Wonder if my mysterious benefactor is going to show up tonight. Then, one night, I was working the speaker at around 2 a.m. when I heard that familiar voice through the speaker, and I knew what was about to happen. He ordered the same meal, the meal I knew I'd be eating, but this time he said something else. Something that made me freeze. He said, and I'll never forget this, "I hope you've been enjoying those Whoppers, Mr. Hargreaves." My last name is Hargreaves. I don't wear my name tag with my last name on it. It's not posted anywhere customers can see. There's no reason at all that this guy should know my last name. For a second, I didn't say anything. Then my brain couldn't catch up. Then I started talking into the speaker, asking who this was, what he wanted, and how he knew my name. I must have said, "Who is this?" 4 or 5 times, but he never answered. And this time, He didn't even pull up to pay. I heard his engine rev, and then he was gone. I was rattled for the rest of my shift. There was nothing I could do. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong, and I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. When I got home after my shift, I found a note on my doorstep, a handwritten note that said, "I know what you did. You have 3 days." I just stood there staring at it, my hands shaking, and I started feeling really sick, like someone had punched me in the gut. I have no idea what I supposedly did. Basically, I've been racking my brain trying to think of anything that could explain it, but I've got nothing. This sounds stupid, but I don't have enemies. I don't have secrets. I'm a 24-year-old guy that works at Burger King and plays video games on his days off. I'm not exactly living the most exciting life. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on my couch with the lights on, dreading whatever was going to happen next. But nothing happened, so I had no choice but to move on. It turned out I wouldn't have to wait long, because the next night at work, that guy was back. This time, he didn't even bother playing games. Instead of ordering food, he just asked me to write something down. Before I could even respond, he gave me an address, some random place on the outskirts of town, in an area I didn't recognize. And then he told me I had 2 days to deliver him $10,000. I damn near laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so insane. There was absolutely no way I'd be giving that guy $10,000. I didn't have $10,000. I still don't. So I decided to ignore it. I figured it had to be some elaborate scam or a prank from someone I knew. I should have called the police right then, but I didn't even think of that. 3 nights later, I thought things were over.
I hadn't dropped any money off, and nothing had happened. But of course, I was wrong. I was sitting there watching TV, winding down from my shift, when out of nowhere, beat, I was jolted up by the sound of shattering glass. I hit the floor on instinct, thinking someone was shooting at me. But when I finally got up and looked around, I realized someone had thrown a rock through my window. By the time I looked outside, whoever had been there was long gone. This time, I called the police. I told them everything: the drive-thru orders, the name, the note, the address. They said they'd check it out and told me to stay vigilant, but they really didn't do much. They told me they'd patrol the area a little more closely, and without doorstep footage, which I obviously don't have, there was nothing they could do. And that was 3 days ago. I've called in sick to work the last 3 nights, but I don't even think that's going to do anything, because the guy clearly knows where I live. I can't afford to not work. I can't afford to move. So I'm stuck in this nightmare until the police can track that person down. I think I might try getting them to track the credit card number the guy used to pay for those Whopper meals. But other than that, I don't really know what to do. Why I got targeted, I have no idea. Hopefully, things don't escalate from here.
I graduated from college about 8 months ago with a degree in communications. And as you can imagine, it's been incredibly useful in helping me secure gainful employment. That's sarcasm, by the way. I'm still living with my parents. I haven't found a real job yet, so I'm off to a great start. In the meantime, I drive for Uber and Uber Eats, sometimes both in the same night, depending on what's poppin'. It's not a career, but it's money, and it lets me feel like I'm doing something productive while I figure my life out. I know that sounds kind of pathetic, but it's what I've got right now. I drive mostly on weekend nights, Friday and Saturday, usually from around 9 p.m. until 2 or 3 in the morning. That's when surge pricing kicks in, and the drunk college kids need rides home from the bars downtown. It's not technically a night shift, but it feels like one. This happened a few weeks ago. It was a Saturday night, maybe around 1:30, and I was about ready to call it. I was about to turn off the app when one more request came through. Pickup was downtown, which was fine, but the drop-off location was really far away, past the suburbs even. I almost declined it for that reason, but the fare was too good. The girl I picked up was completely normal. No drama, no weird conversation. The drive took about 40 minutes. By the time I dropped her off, it was past 2 o'clock. And then I was alone, out in the middle of absolutely nowhere, with a 40-minute drive back to civilization. I turned the car around and started heading home. Not 10 minutes into the drive, I saw a car stopped in the middle of the road with its hazards on. As I approached cautiously, I realized there were 2 people standing in front of the car, waving their arms like they were trying to flag me down. My first instinct was not to stop, but I'm someone who can't just ignore a person in need. So, against my better judgment, I stopped. I pulled over about 20 feet away, rolled my window down just a few inches. Enough to hear them, not enough for someone to reach inside. It was a middle-aged couple, which actually put me at ease a little. That is, until they started talking. The woman did most of the talking. She had this frantic energy about her, but also something that felt slightly rehearsed, like she'd given the speech before. She said they were warning drivers about a collapsed bridge ahead. She went on to say it happened earlier that day, and they'd almost driven right off themselves. She pointed down the road into the darkness and said if I kept going, I'd end up in the river. Naturally, I asked what I should do instead. The husband spoke of a turnoff about halfway between where we were and the bridge. He said it cut through the woods, said it would add time, but it would get me back to the main highway without having to deal with the bridge. I thanked them and started driving. Something felt off. I didn't know what it was, but I knew one thing. I was going to trust my gut and just drive the way I had been intending to go. About a mile down the road, I saw the turnoff they'd been talking about, a narrow dirt path that disappeared into the trees, barely wide enough for one car. I kept driving. A few minutes later, I reached the bridge. I slowed down, but it was fine. It wasn't collapsed, not even close. It didn't look damaged at all. I drove across without any issues and made it back to the main highway a few minutes later. Even though nothing happened, it stuck with me. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about what would have happened if I'd followed that couple's instructions, if I'd turned down that dirt road alone in the middle of the night. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me and I did something stupid. I drove back out there. Middle of the afternoon, broad daylight, which made me feel slightly less insane. I retraced my route. Those people weren't there, obviously. When I got to the turnoff, the dirt path into the woods, I slowed down and pulled over. And to my surprise, there was something new. A sign nailed to a tree right at the entrance that simply said, "Dead End." That sign hadn't been there before. I would have definitely noticed it that night, even in the dark. Someone had put it up in the last few days. I sat in my car, staring at the path. In the daylight, it didn't look quite as ominous, just a narrow dirt road disappearing into dense trees. I wanted to explore, but I worried my car would get stuck, so I decided to go on foot. I turned off the engine, stepped out, and instantly I got a bad feeling. I stood at the edge of the path, trying to see further down, but there wasn't much to see. I don't know what it was, but something about being out there, standing in the open, discouraged me from walking in. Things went from 0 to 100 in about 2 seconds. As I turned around and walked back to my car, I heard a scream. A woman's scream, awful, coming from deep in the woods down the path. I can't tell you how fast I got out of there. Before I could even think, I was already speeding away. I don't think I've ever been so scared before. That was about 2 weeks ago. I haven't been back, but I can't stop thinking about it. Part of me knows I should leave it alone, but part of me has thought about asking a friend to come out there with me. If I do, I'll record a video and send it. But for now, all I can do is wonder about that scream and those people. This happened a few winters ago when I was working overnight security for a commercial warehouse complex. I was 26 and I'd been doing the job for about 8 months. The shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. and I was always the only employee on the site. There was a supervisor I could call if something went wrong, but for the most part, it was just me and the cameras. The complex was an industrial area on the edge of a small city that didn't have much nightlife. Most nights followed the same routine: clock in, walk the exterior, then sit in the security office and monitor the cameras. Every hour, another patrol. The warehouse stored mostly industrial equipment and bulk supplies, nothing particularly valuable. The night everything went sideways started pretty normally. It was cold enough for snow, but it wasn't heavy. I did my first patrol, everything was secure, then I went back to the office. Around 1:30 a.m., I got a motion alert on one of the loading dock cameras. Not unusual, the system was sensitive. Wind or animals could trigger it. I pulled up the feed and watched for a minute. Everything looked normal. Empty dock, snow drifting past the floodlights. But the alerts kept coming. Every 10 or 15 minutes, the same camera would trigger. Each time I checked the feed, and each time I saw nothing. What started to bother me was the movement always seemed to happen right at the edge of the frame, like something was there but just out of view. By 2:30, I had 6 or 7 alerts from the same camera. No other cameras were triggering, just that one. At 3 a.m., I went outside to check it myself. The snow had mostly stopped. The complex was dead silent. I walked the full perimeter of the dock area with my flashlight. I didn't see anything unusual. All bay doors were closed and locked. No footprints in the snow except mine. I went back inside. About 20 minutes later, I heard a loud metallic scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged across concrete. It came from inside the warehouse, somewhere deep in the building. I checked the interior cameras. All 6 feeds showed empty aisles. I was starting to freak out because I felt like I was being watched or toyed with. But I explained it away. Wind, settling metal, something like that. An hour later, I heard it again. Louder, dragging, then a sharp bang like something slammed into an interior door. I cycled through cameras again, nothing on 1 through 5. When I got to camera 6, the feed was black, maybe 3 seconds of static. Then it came back, but something was different. The angle had shifted slightly, just a few degrees, like someone bumped it or adjusted it. At that point, I had no choice. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and headed into the warehouse. The interior was massive, probably 80,000 square feet. Long aisles, industrial shelving, dim overhead lights casting everything in that yellowish half-light. I was about halfway down the main aisle when I heard footsteps coming from somewhere to my left. A person walking 2 or 3 aisles over. As soon as I stopped, the footsteps stopped too. I stood there, trying to control my breathing. Complete silence. After what felt like forever, I couldn't take it anymore. I announced myself as security and told whoever was there to reveal themselves. No response. The rest of that patrol was terrifying. I kept expecting a fight, a confrontation, something. But the longer I searched without finding anyone, the worse it got. Because I knew 100% there was someone in there. I didn't see or hear anything for the rest of my shift, but that night remains one of the freakiest things that's ever happened to me. This memory still terrifies me, and outside of police and a few close family members, this is the first time I've fully revisited it.
A few years ago, I got my first job at a 24-hour gym. At the time, I was in a gap year between high school and college, so I worked a lot of night shifts. The gym was open 24/7 and accessed by key card only, meaning often there were only 1 or 2 employees working. People checked in, used equipment, and left. The place mostly managed itself. All entries, exits, and equipment usage was tracked digitally, so my job was simple. Sit in the office, watch cameras, occasionally clean, maybe chat with a guest. It was in a rough part of town, but most people were friendly. It was one of those gyms where regulars all sort of know each other, mainly because very few people come in overnight. One night in particular, I worked from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Long, boring, exhausting. But everything that happened that night keeps me up even now. It was around 2 a.m. when I'd already done multiple rounds of the building and finished the routine paperwork. I was tired, so I sat down to monitor the cameras. Everything looked normal at first. A couple regulars came and went. I recognized almost everyone except one man. I noticed him on a treadmill in the far corner. Normally that wouldn't mean anything. We get new guests sometimes. But what caught me was how fast he was running. I pulled up the treadmill number in the system where I could live monitor equipment. He was running 9 miles per hour. Impressive. But then 10 minutes passed. 15. He never slowed down. I looked closer at the camera. I can't describe it perfectly, but he was unsettling. Ragged clothes, long, messy hair. His face barely moved. He just stared forward. Then I noticed his feet. He was barefoot. Barefoot, running 9 miles per hour for 15 minutes, staring into the distance. At that point, I was weirded out, especially since he was now the only person in the building besides me. I pulled myself together and remembered the policy, shoes required. I decided that was my excuse to talk to him. Even though his appearance freaked me out, I worked up the courage to leave the office. The treadmill he was on was almost directly outside the employee hallway, and as soon as I turned that corner, my heart stopped. The treadmill was covered in blood. His feet were tearing apart as he ran. Blood wasn't just dripping, it was splattering from his feet and ankles with every step. His face was still stone cold, staring straight ahead. His mouth was wide open as he ran. He looked like he was on every drug on the planet. At that point, I was terrified. My gut told me he was dangerous, but I still tried to yell at him to stop. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I raised my voice so he could hear me over the thudding of his feet. He didn't say a word. He didn't turn his head. He just kept running, mouth open, staring forward. I yelled again, asking what he was doing. He muttered in the coldest, rasping voice I've ever heard, "Are you there?" He wasn't out of breath. He wasn't panting. He just said it like a broken recording. I told him to stop again, and again he said, "Are you there?" The pool of blood at the end of the machine was growing. At that point, I was deciding I was calling the cops. I hurried back into the office and grabbed my phone. But before I dialed, I glanced at the monitors again. He was staring directly into the camera, sprinting, bleeding, mouth open, staring at the camera. My stomach dropped. I turned away. Then I heard him screaming from outside the office door. Not words, just raw screaming like an animal sound. Then the treadmill feed showed him hopping off the machine without turning it off and sprinting out of the camera's view. I started flipping through cameras trying to find him. Nothing. I checked every angle. Still nothing. Then I remembered the one camera I hadn't checked yet, the employee hallway. There he was, standing maybe 6 feet from the office door, just waiting. I don't know how he got into that hallway without a key card. I don't know how he moved that fast. I only know I slammed the lock. Not even 5 seconds later, the doorknob started rattling. That's when I called 911. He started screaming again and pounding the door while I tried to explain what was happening. Dispatch told me officers were on the way, about 5 minutes out. I backed into the corner of the office, holding my phone like it could protect me. The screaming didn't stop. It was deep, so deep it barely sounded human. Then, suddenly, silence. No movement, no shaking, nothing. I checked the hallway camera again. He was gone. When the police arrived, I made them search the entire building before I'd step out of that office. They couldn't find him anywhere. I answered questions, went home, and quit the next day. I have not stepped inside that gym since, and I still think about what would have happened if I hadn't locked that door.